Hi everyone, I'm so happy that you're here to join me for the Way of the Animal podcast.
I wanted to talk about stories. This is very much from a podcast we literally just finished recording, but stories, like the stories we tell ourselves, the stories other people tell us about things. I like stories. Like, I love stories. And I remember, oh my God, I can't remember what it was from. It's from probably a film or something. And there was a quote in it that you don't need to tell me how something works. You just need to tell me what it's like. So like that, and that's the thing with stories, is you can explain a nuclear reactor to a child if you make it in terms that they can understand using a story. And stories, you remember stories, that's why the Bible's full of stories, that's why history's full of mythology, and as a species, we communicate and learn and develop through stories.
Okay.
I think it's really interesting. I think it's like an interesting thing because obviously nothing else communicates through stories, but...
Isn't it interesting that, that some of the stories as well have become what they call old wives' tales and things, and it's just like actually realising that a lot of these things that people like to construe as fiction are just slightly embellished truth.
So that's another interesting side of story. I love stories. Stories excite me. But that's another interesting thing. So when you come to mythology and things like that, all these stories of gods and great demons and monsters, all this sort of thing. So, well, probably the monsters and things didn't exist, although I do like watching Supernatural, so maybe they do. But more than likely, it's a way of telling a story, like the sea kelpie.
Mm-hmm.
The sea kelpie that was meant to live in the waters and would come up and drown young maidens that went to the water's edge, which is a story to tell children, don't go near the water because you could fall in and drown.
Or apparently young maidens.
Well, young maidens.
But it's like Hansel and Gretel,
It's like Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah.
It's stories and fantastical stories because people remember stories, people enjoy stories. Yeah. So I find it really interesting as well that our minds work through stories. We always talk about the stories you tell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The stories your subconscious tells you. Your subconscious doesn't tell you yes and no's. It tells you a little story.
Because it's more believable.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's because I don't know.
Isn't it strange? Yep, it's an interesting concept because, And it's interesting because I was just thinking there, it's funny we call it stories that your mind, but it's because when we call it stories, you can almost, it's that, well, they're fake, they're not real.
Yeah, well, that's the other interesting thing is they are stories and some of them are very unhelpful stories.
Yeah.
But it's that thing, your mind, in the back of your mind, it doesn't say that you are no good at this, it's because of this. It gives you a story. It gives you context.
Mm.
It doesn't just say you're no good. It says you're no good because. And I think that's really interesting how we develop that way, and then how can we harness that to change our stories. So you talk about the perception you have on things or the feeling you have for things and moving it from an unhelpful.
Well, sometimes I do that.
Don't move it from helpful to unhelpful. That's not a good way.
Sometimes I can do that. That's a good one, isn't it?
You have to flip that around.
Quite a talent.
Yeah. Move from unhelpful stories to helpful stories. And I wonder if that's part of the thing. I really don't know on this one, but is it better to try and change your perspective by changing with a story than changing with just a phrase or word?
Yeah, because Yeah. So it's like rewriting the stories.
Yes, exactly. Rewriting the story rather than saying I have this negative story in my subconscious. I'm not good enough because blah 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 blah. Rather than saying no, I am good enough. Well, no, you're not because look, I've got evidence here because of this. So you have to change. Well, I don't know if you do have to, but do you have to change it to I am good enough because of this?
I mean, generally that's what you do with NLP, isn't it? Don't you do change the story?
Neuro-linguistic programming, or LMP.
NLP. That one.
NLP.
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Thank you. It's about the words you use and the phrases you use and
the stories you tell yourself.
Stories you tell yourself. It very much, or at least the stuff I've done with NLP, focuses more on the small things, like the small negative words within a saying something.
Yeah, so it's like my anxiety. Like it's not mine, it's just anxiety, it's anxious feelings.
There you go. Yeah. Rather than the larger context of a story.
Well, I mean, because I've worked with someone who did NLP with me. My God, words. And talking of words, she would help me to turn around that story. At times, I think. I think there was times where it would be like, well, I am good enough because I've done this. I'm this, and but I don't know. I struggle with words.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, when you turn around, so you say you turn around a story.
Yeah.
You turn around a story and you're like, yeah, well, I'm good enough because I'm amazing, I've done this and I've done that and done that. It's like, I don't feel it, so it doesn't change.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's interesting, because I feel the story.
Yeah. So I would have to feel, like really consciously feel the story to change the story.
So when you read a book, because I know you read a lot of books, do you get emotional responses to the books?
Actually, well, the thing that I've done for the last 3 years or so is I don't read fiction anymore. I only read non-fiction.
Okay.
But yeah, I used to love stories, and yes, I would get very emotional in the books. Yeah, so I'd really get into it.
Okay, so you do feel the stories.
Yeah,
then.
I feel the stories, but if I tried to create stories of my own, it's like I have created this segregation between my mind and thoughts.
Interesting.
And me.
Yeah. So,
because I can't trust my mind.
I see. There's a good story.
Yeah, we can have a therapy session now.
I can't trust my mind because?
Because it's mean. Have you not heard some of the things it says?
No, they're the voices in your head.
What?
But that's the thing. So that's a really interesting one with you, that if you tell yourself a story about yourself, it feels disconnected from you.
I would have to really work on the right words to reprogram, like to allow it to be something else.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, because I'm amazing, like that just immediate resistance to I'm amazing. Because I don't feel amazing. Yeah. So, like, that would not be the right story to create. And
interesting. So, if you tell yourself a story, I'm amazing because I've achieved this, this, and this, and I've done this, and this, and this, and I can see you shaking your head. Does your mind constantly bring up the story of, no, you're not because of this, this, and this?
No, I just feel resistance.
You feel resistance.
So it's just like my body goes into nope.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah. So that's an interesting thing, is that the critical part of your thinking. So you've got a part in hypnotherapy, a lot of the and slowly count down from blah blah, and the relaxing and the getting you into that hypnotic state is to bypass your critical thinking. Mm-hmm. So it's to bypass that part of your brain that says no, that resists. And there are various ways to do it. It's interesting in hypnotherapy, you do things like you basically slowly get people to agree with you.
And that's why like affirmations work well during meditation.
During meditation, because you've bypassed the critical thinking.
Yes.
And there are subtle ways to do it in hypnotherapy. Things like have a seat. You're giving someone a command and they're following it. And have a seat, that's a very reasonable thing to say to someone. And, oh, yep, I'll do what they say. And that sort of bypasses critical thinking because you don't critically think, now, why is he asking me to have a seat?
Yeah.
It's just like, have a seat. Yep, okay.
Yeah, okay.
And if you just layer upon layer a few of them, then you get into a habit of accepting commands. Okay. And anyway, we're getting a little bit off topic because we're talking about stories.
Yeah, but you're talking about bypassing the critical thinking because I was saying nope. Yeah,
because you were saying no.
So if I was in a more suggestive state, so if I was more relaxed, or even just come out of a meditation, or I just come out from breathing exercise and just sitting with myself, connecting with that inner being like I did we talked about in the previous or other podcast, then I would probably find it easier to create a new story.
Yeah, I think, that's how it works. And the more I think about it, the more interesting I think is because the concept of vision boards and writing your future and visualizing your future, getting your journal, writing out, about your life. And a lot of the thinking on that is rather than writing about I'm going to, as you put it, I am.
Yeah, it's already done.
You put it in the present. So you write a story about you being in that place.
And the important thing again is you need to feel like you're in that place in the story.
So the story has to be good and believable.
Yeah. So you need to be, so it's like people go on and on about manifesting and things. Yeah. And like, I think the concept a lot of people miss is to really create what you want, you need to feel like you've already got it. And you need to feel like you're already that person you want to be. Because you are. Yeah. You're the same person. That's so you can create that feeling within you. And someone's wrecking the place. And just feel that. And I've done a lot of learning with this, with people just like creating my business, knowing how I want it to be and how I want to feel. But by, like I said, creating the story in the present, getting here to Canada, I wrote for a year or so about how it would be in Canada, how it would feel in Canada,
And so in your story that you wrote, was it... How much detail did you go into?
Sometimes lots.
See, I think that's one of the key parts of it. And I know, again, in meditations, in hypnotherapy and things like that, if you're getting people to visualize things, now the level of different people, for some people are very visual, some people auditory, So when you're telling a story, the more senses you can bring into the story, the more believable and the wider range of people will sort of accept themselves within that area.
Yeah, definitely.
So then I guess the way that we're pushing out to change your story is to get into that meditative state, that very relaxed, bypassing the critical thinking.
But I think as well you can practice, sorry, I'm just interrupting, because we just spoke about it in the happiness podcast, is that it's about this being intentional.
Yeah.
So it's about creating, so you can even create a story about your next moments.
Yes.
So I used the example of driving in the car and going into town and wanting to be in flow with traffic and it being easy and feeling calm when I'm doing, so that's like, I've talked about how I want to feel. I talked how I wanted to go. I talked about, so it's like, adding all that,
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And it slightly pulls off of what we were talking about, but for me, stories are a lot about feelings and about emotions. And I enjoy, that's one of the things I enjoy about stories is how that brings everything into it.
Mm-hmm. It's your way. So shining the light on you is your way of expressing your emotions that you sometimes struggle to do in real life.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not the most emotionally open person.
No, you're not the most outwardly emotional. You're a very emotional person. It's just, it's internal. Yeah. It's not seen from the outside. I can feel it because I'm very sensitive.
And you've known me for 20 something years.
Yeah. So, but a lot of people will not recognize that you're having an emotional response just
Yes.
because they don't know.
Yeah. And when people do realize it's an emotional response, they should be concerned.
Yes, I know. I know. When you've got to the stage where it's an outward emotion, yikes.
But yeah, so that's one of the big things for stories for me is I enjoy, but more, so there are two things that I enjoy about stories. I enjoy the emotional side of it, the expressive side of it, but I enjoy the sort of hidden meanings and
The creative.
yeah, so I enjoy that sort of mythology. Like,
Yeah.
I enjoy the question of what is this person talking about? And for me, it takes me back to doing English at school. I did not do well in most of my English classes at school because I'm dyslexic, so reading and writing weren't great for me. But I remember one teacher I had who was very, very good, and we were doing poetry. And we were doing, is it Keaton's Ode to Autumn? Anyway, Keats, you know Ode to Autumn though. Yeah, I can't remember who did it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That was what we were doing. And we were all talking about the metaphors he used and everything and comparing summer, blah, 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 blah. For me, it was not about autumn. It was about a woman. That's what I thought it was. And that's one of the things I like about stories. And then when you start to think about what the person's talking about in the story, realistically, it doesn't really matter what the person's talking about in the story. It matters about what the story means to you.
Yeah.
And it tells you a lot more about yourself, about what you think it is.
That's what I found very confusing initially about English, because I also had a very good English teacher. And, you know, when you read a book and then you would do an essay about the book and what it was about, and realising I could write anything about what the story was about.
I remember one point thinking, English is such a scam. I can literally write anything and there's no wrong answer.
Exactly.
I did a lot of sciences and math and stuff where there is a wrong answer.
Well, so I just had that it was a real eye-opener, because everything else other than like the arts and music was very much a box. You were put in a box and it was black or white, you know, you're either right or you're wrong. And I never viewed English till that point as like, and I don't know why, but such a creative thing.
Yeah. Like
I just never saw it as such a loose, creative thing. I mean, yes, there's still that you should phrase things correct.
Grammar.
Yes, grammar. I'm remembering the English test we had to do for coming here, and realising that I am not great at writing English.
Actually,
especially formal letters and things like that.
I remember your marks, you're not good at listening.
No, I wasn't good at listening, but I found it quite challenging to remember exactly how to write English, how we're supposed to write it.
Yeah.
Because as well, for what I do a lot of writing of ideas and things I want to say, and even started formulating things for a book, you know, bringing content together for a book. And I just write what comes as it comes.
Yeah.
And I go back and I'm like, well, I've put about 1 million words and no full stop there. And it's just because it's just downloading. It's just like all the information's just coming. And obviously, you know, I can go back and edit it. But I notice when you go back and edit it, it loses the natural rhythm and flow that the words had when you start to put it into the English box of full stop should be here, they should have comma there, you should, you know.
So I find that interesting because I write a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And I write the story with trying to get a cadence and a feel and everything like that. So I 100% do not form proper sentences intentionally. And then, you know, I look at, you know, Microsoft Word or whatever, and it's like, bad grammar. I'm like, no, it's not. It's like, it's deliberate to have a short stump, you know. It's for a reason.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it just, you know, it's that thing about letting things be how it is rather than try to fit it in a box that takes away from what it is.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, it needs to be some form of English that people can actually understand, because sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what I've written here.
done that
But
before.
it's interesting that we feel we should conform.
Stories.
Well, conform to English
Yeah.
when we write our stories, the formal way of writing. And then, mine's not stories, but mine is, well, it's my stories.
It is a story.
It's my stories. It's my perspective
Everything's stories.
on life.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm writing. So, yeah, but realizing that, I'm going to need an editor. Someone who can speak English and write English.
But still, this thing is to convey an idea. You're telling a story.
Yeah.
And while it is not a made-up fantasy story, it's still a story.
I've just had a complete
It's
aha moment. Thank you.
That's quite
well,
all
because
right.
I've been writing. I started writing the book last year.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about it, but I lost some energy in it for one reason or another. But realizing how little stories there are in my story.
It's all stories.
Yeah.
You think about it.
So it's like, I think I've almost gone from fact to fact. So my first run through of what I've wanted, it's been more, okay, it's this. And now I'm realizing, okay, now I get to go back and add the stories and the life events and the things that I've experienced and just add that to it to make it more me and make it more what it is. So.
But it's
Exciting.
that thing, because
Better get back to my book.
you look at children growing up and in maths class, Adam has £2 and he's going to go to the store to buy 3 apples that cost how much money?
Yeah.
How much? It's a story. There are 2 trains traveling.
But that happens in even higher maths as well. Yeah.
They use a story.
Use stories, yeah. Interesting.
Everything's a story. I also
Oh my God, I'm so excited to get back to my book now. I'm totally on it.
You're just going to leave.
Yeah,
Just leave me sitting here.
Right, you finish the podcast. I'm going to, oh no, my laptop's here.
Yeah, there you go. Just start typing away
But
while I'm
now
talking
it's
to
just
you.
like, okay, yep.
It's stories. And it's that question of how do you change the stories you tell yourself? Because that's what we're hearing. The overarching story of the podcasts is sort of that self-improvement side of things, that being aware of yourself.
It seems to be the way that we're doing, I'm doing it,
Well,
but it's because I want to help people and help people think about these things. Whether we have the answers or not, that doesn't matter. It's just to be more aware.
Give an idea of ways you can look at things differently. But everything comes down to what stories do you tell yourself?
And you said to me, just flick the wire now, that's going to be in the recording. You said to me the other day, write it down.
Yes.
Because I can't even remember what it was, but I was doing it in my head and you need to write it down. It's like...
The process of writing for most people involves a lot of your subconscious, because it's a bit like driving. You can drive on autopilot quite easily. You can write on autopilot quite easily. So again, it helps to bypass that critical thinking.
And it's like, so I have been journaling on and off for years, and interestingly, the more I struggle, the less I want to journal. And I think it's a bit like I was talking about in the happiness podcast. I can distract myself and not really look at what the problem is. Yeah. I don't have to look at it. Yeah. But it's then when I actually look at the problem and write it down, I'm like, oh, I am so scared of this, and this is why I don't feel safe, for example. And then, well, why is that? And then write about it, and then going, well, that's just, I end up going, well, that's just ridiculous. So I go, I am safe, because that isn't what that is. And, it's amazing how when you, like you said, when you start writing it down, so it takes out that critical thinking, that you can just go, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. And I tend to then have an emotional release of a wee cry or a laugh or whatever. Just be like, damn it,
But it's funny how funny it is when you realize how stupid you're being. Yeah. Because let's face it, a lot of our hang-ups that we have as, poorly functioning people, they're so laughably stupid.
And again, it's like you're realizing that you're just taking life too seriously. And
you take life too seriously, and a lot of things can come up from traumas that you've had, that when you go back and you find the actual trauma that it was, it's like, really?
Oh.
I built that from this?
Yeah.
It's like, but you build on the story and you build on the story and you build on the story. Change the story.
Yeah, you can rewrite your stories, you can change, and that changes your whole perspective on life and how you navigate life.
Do you want to another shine a light on me and the way I do things? That I am a firm believer of you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the story I tell myself constantly. And I find ways to reinforce it throughout life because I love learning new things. And every time you learn new things, well, I can do that then now because I've learned this new thing. And being able to tell yourself that story, that you can do anything and you can change your stories and you can create whatever you want to create, it's such an empowering belief system to have.
And it's something that has started to rub off on me.
Yeah.
So it takes more for me to get to that point, but it's usually, something snowballing in the wrong what I feel is the wrong direction, and it's just like, oh no, well, what are we gonna do? And it's like, well, actually, does it really matter? Can we do anything? Does it matter? No.
Yeah.
Like, all that matters is me, you, and the dogs, and as long as we're safe and well, then
we can do anything.
Anything else is just...
Yeah. And the funny thing is, when I think about it, my story that I tell myself of I can do anything, and something I definitely aspire to in life is being able to do lots of different things and having a wide variety of skills, all comes down to a Danny DeVito film.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was a film I watched when I was a kid called The Renaissance Man, a comedy film with Danny DeVito. And there was a bit in it about talking about this guy who was a real I can't remember who the guy was, but he could do this, he could do that, he could do this, he had all these different things he could do. And I can't remember the part of the story wasn't even about that. It was about there was only one reason that Danny DeVito remembered that, kind of blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the story wasn't about that. But for some reason in my child brain, and this is why it's funny, the things that stick. For some reason in my child brain, the thought of this person who could turn their hand to anything really stuck with me. And I was like, wow, imagine being that type. And it'll have a lot to do with the way my childhood was and things, but the ability to do anything. I suppose it brings me to, in a later life, like to rely on myself more than rely on others. Mm-hmm. But, still. Anyway, it's interesting where stories come from, is my point.
It was funny because I was just thinking about you this morning and how, you learn new things, and that one of the things you've been learning, because you're working a lot with cattle now, is actually roping.
Yep.
Using a lasso, or however it's pronounced.
Rope.
Using a rope. And now you're becoming really skilled at it because you're doing it every day. And
really skilled are a bit of a stretch.
You are. You're.
I'm improving dramatically.
Yeah, exactly. You're becoming really skilled at it. You're catching most calves that you throw a rope at.
Yes, my catch percentage is higher than my miss percentage.
Yeah, which I know from the beginning that was not the case. Though.
And sometimes I still miss really easy shots.
Yeah,
but
that's fine. That's just fine. And the great thing is you know why. A lot of the time.
Yes, I do know why.
Oh, that was a bad loop, or I threw it
I know
at
why.
the wrong point, or the calf does this lovely little.
That's it. Yeah,
just
I had one
point.
that just every time I threw it, it just took a single step backwards, and I was like, oh, did it to me twice, and I was like, okay, I'm going to catch you another day. But the interesting thing with stories you tell yourself is, so the story you wrote about that was that I'm learning, blah, 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 I'm getting better, blah, 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 I've been catching a lot of things, blah, blah, blah. That's the story you tell yourself. And I don't know what story I tell myself. I do tell myself a story that I'm getting better at it. But my story, and this comes from perspective, I redact the negatives. I don't focus on the misses.
Yeah, that's it.
When I think about...
But you did, completely became very modest. Oh, no. I'm like, no, you're doing it. The main thing is you're doing it. You're using it as your main tool to get hold of calves, to tag them.
Yes.
And can't imagine, like 2 years ago, if we'd said you're going to be using a rope to catch calves to tag them, you would be like, yeah.
It's going to take a long time.
Yeah, I'll practice. Because it's you, you'd be well up for it. But, would you have believed that in the short space of time that you're as competent as you are?
But that's the thing
great.
with you can do anything,
Yeah.
is that all learning new things, skills, knowledge takes just doing it.
Yeah, practice.
Just go out and do it.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know why I felt the need to say that, but it came to me this morning. I was thinking about you.
I like that with the podcast, is that it just kind of goes where it goes.
Yeah, well, that's because it is what it is.
It is what it is, and it goes where it goes.
Exactly. I'm not trying to make it anything other than it is.
Yeah, just a conversation.
Exactly.
I like that.
Thank you for our conversation on stories. That's been really interesting. And now go away because I'm going to go work on my book.
You got to go write your story.
Yeah, exactly.
Write your story and put lots of emotions and feelings
Yeah.
and senses into it to make
There's
it.
so much more now because I realise it's like a robot's written it. So I'm looking forward to getting into that.
You have
once
to
again.
get yourself into the story.
Yeah, creating more energy in that. So that's
And
exciting.
that's
and
with-
maybe at some point I'll have a book for people
Now
to
that sounds fun. Maybe at some point I'll have a book too.
Yeah.
But mine won't be like your book.
No, mine's non-fiction. Well, non-fiction. It's full of stories, but non-fiction. Okay, well, thank you very much.